get to a category that's kind of, it seems like they're in between the two, but we'll dig deeper and find out that they're actually, according to Allah, they're just another category of disbelievers. They're actually just an extension of those who don't believe. And this the popular term for them among the Muslim community is the hypocrites. People who say one thing and do another, right? Now the thing is, the previous two groups, everything is very obvious. The one who believes is obvious, and the one who disbelieves is obvious, because they demonstrate what they believe. But this category of people is complicated. And that's why you'll notice in a couple of ayat, in just 5 ayat, the matter of the believers was made very clear. In a couple of ayat, the matter of the stubborn disbeliever was made very, very clear. But when it comes to the Munafik and the hypocrite, there are exhaustive ayat, and some of the most complicated examples given in the Quran are given here. By the way, somebody, if you can close the door, the sound is distracting, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Also, probably children will be wrestling eventually. So, it's at-tab'u aghlab, you know. So, but in any case, so this is the most complicated group that the Quran talks about, and it's the most exhaustively talked about group. There are several ayat about them in this surah. There's going to be ayat dedicated to them exhaustively in Surah An-Nisa, for example. Surah Al-Ma'idah deals with them to some extent. Then you've got a huge chunk. Actually, I even skipped Ali Imran. There's a piece about them in Ali Imran. You've got an exhaustive discourse about them in Surah Al-Anfal, then again in Surah Al-Tawbah, then again later on in Surah Al-Nur, Surah Al-Munafiqun. I mean, over and over again, this group of people is talked about and talked about exhaustively. But it is a very complicated subject. It is not a simple subject. And Allah intended it to be so. Because He kept it complicated for a reason. What goes on inside of these people, first of all, it is complicated. They're not in one situation. La ilaha ula wa la ilaha ula mudhabdhabina bayna dhalik. They're not quite here, they're not quite there. They're kind of caught in between. Sometimes they have a good day, sometimes they have a bad day. They fluctuate. So you can't put a finger on it. It's kind of like a patient whose disease shows up sometimes, and other times he looks perfectly happy, perfectly healthy. And you're like, this person's not sick at all. And then another day, they're just completely they can't even get out of bed, you know? And so it's very difficult to diagnose that situation. Now this is important because the attitude of the Muslims, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the subject of nifaq, of hypocrisy, in light of the Quran, just some things about it, because even though it's a complicated subject, I felt it important to give you an overview because it's the first time Allah is going to talk about this group. Because, for Muslims, we kind of use these terms too casually. Just like yesterday I talked about, we use the term kafir casually. Quran uses it very specifically, we use it very casually. Same thing with the word munafiq. Allah uses it very specifically, very targeted and very serious term, and we throw the word out for just, you're hearing a khutbah about hypocrites and you're like, yeah man, my cousin, seriously, he's such a hypocrite. And you're like, in your head you've already got a picture of somebody who you want to label, So we're too casual with this very, very serious term. So just a couple of comments about the seriousness of this subject. There is nobody talked about in the Quran that calls for more anger from Allah than this group of people. There is nobody in the Quran that is described with worse punishment than this group of people. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ. The hypocrites, no doubt, are in the lowest of the stages of hell. And the lower hell goes, the worse it gets. And the lowest of them is reserved for munafiqeen. So when you decide or I decide to just call somebody a hypocrite, it's not a small thing that you just did. That's actually far worse than even kafir. It's actually far worse than kafir. The level to which Allah Azza wa Jalla will describe His anger towards these people is not something small. That's the first thing to note.